is Wimbledon Sunday. Djokovic is up and rolling right now. However, though, it's Iowa and Minnesota time for us here on the Big Break podcast. Iowa has.
Do it.
Yeah, let's do it, guys. Iowa has a couple big name transfers coming in. Corey knows these two dudes a little well. Go ahead and tell us who those transfers are.
Well, they have a number of transfers that are well-known players, but Cade McNamara and Eric all transferred from Michigan to Iowa. I think I'm not surprised by Cade. He was they both were actually team captains last year on Michigan's roster. Cade got beaten out last year, so that wasn't really surprising for him to transfer. I am a little surprised that he transferred to a place where their offense goes to die. But I mean, I think if anybody can make their offense better, I think Cade is a good leader, and I think he can handle that. Eric All had some back issues, and hopefully he's healthy now, but he's a big target and someone to look out for.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Cade for just a moment here, though, guys. He's talking a big game going into Hawkeye Nation, talking a big game. Ethan, you're wearing the jersey.
That's right. That's right.
Does Iowa have the company that Cade will need to back up that big game he's talking?
I hope. I know that they brought in Caleb Brown also on transfer to catch balls from McNamara. I really was just trying to pull up his stats for his career. As we were talking and getting pulled up this morning, I didn't think about that ahead of time. He's really only had one season to show what he can do. And I guess more or less, I'm not concerned about Cade McNamara's talent as I am about who's calling the plays, whether it's Kirk or Brian. I assume Brian's calling the plays this season, but if Kirk is still calling the plays in Iowa, you got to let Cade fly. Like, you can't rely on this run, punt. You can't play trestle ball all season. You're not going to get anywhere. You're not here to run the ball. You're here to pass the ball now. You got to show your offense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Drew, break down that Iowa Hawkeye offense here for us.
All right. Well, you start with everyone's least favorite offensive coordinator in the nation, Brian Ferentz, who had his contract amended earlier this year. He's taking about $50,000 less dollars. Huge hit.
Man.
Darn.
Couple dinners.
To get that $50K back, he has two stipulations that he has to hit with his offense.
Okay.
The first is to average 25 points per game, which
that ain't gonna happen.
Which would actually rank them around 80th. So that's not very impressive. And then the second one is to win 7 games, which I think they'll do.
So what I'm gathering from that, what they're saying is to earn your 50K back, you have to outscore our defense average throughout the season. Right?
You got to score.
Yeah.
Like,
they basically have to add a touchdown and a half to last year's offense. So,
which their defense outscored their offense. Didn't they?
I think at one point. I think
they gave up less
at one
points.
Point. Yeah.
No, but I'm pretty sure like Iowa's defense though like scored more points than Iowa's offense did.
But I mean, Iowa led the league. They led the league in punting. They led the country in punting last year.
Yeah,
that's true.
But I think McNamara coming in is a good thing. Spencer Petras is trash. McNamara is a good game manager. They have an excellent running back in Caleb Johnson. I'm really worried about the playmakers around. I like Nico Reganey. I think this will be his fourth or fifth year, but he's more of a special teams guy, maybe a slot receiver, not a big numbers guy. Caleb Brown, kind of unproven. We're just kind of basing that off of stars. Eric Hall's a good bring in, as well as Seth Anderson, who's another tight end they brought in from Charleston Southern. Um, so I wonder about the receivers. I think the running back room is good. I think the quarterback room is all right. And I think the offensive line is awesome. So I think, I think, I think this is going to be a typical Iowa offense. They might throw the ball a few more times, but they're going to pound it up the middle with these running backs.
So standard, just Big Ten,
And
ground and
yeah,
pound.
and so Ferentz has been the OC since 2016.
Yeah.
He's averaged over 25 points in 1, 2, 3, 4 of those 7 years. So I think they'll be like right around that 25 mark.
Right. Okay.
I mean, yeah, they averaged the fewest yards per game in the last 7 years by 52 yards last year, and they averaged 14 yards per play, which actually was tied for the most in the last 7 years under his regime. So that kind of surprised me. Fewest yards per game, but most yards per play.
Yeah, when they actually had those plays.
Yeah, they were probably big plays. I mean, they're bringing 9 guys back, or what? Let's see, returning 9 offensive starters. 7 of the 8 players I found they brought in were offensive. And they got 39 returning lettermen, 8-5 from a bowl win. Music City Bowl shut out UK. They put up 20 points, 21.
21.
Yeah, I mean,
they're, to be honest, if you want to take, there's a few programs if you want to learn how to play defense, because whatever Iowa does on defense, they're always ranked in the top like 5 nationally, like almost every year.
yep.
If you want to look at what you should probably do as a defense, there's a few programs. Georgia's has a good defensive program. Iowa has a really good defensive program. Michigan does have a good defensive program. Their defense is always, is typically really, really good.
Yep.
You got to look to what these certain programs are doing, because Iowa's defense in 2022 reached rare, very rare levels of success that we've seen. And what's scary is if Ferentz could get a decent, and I mean like just a decent offensive coordinator that can add some flavor, some spice to that offense, they could potentially be contenders every year.
Definitely.
I mean, they would have been they'd been a contender. They were a contender a couple years ago, but they would have been a contender last year if they had an offense. I mean, he's
Right.
literally the problem. That's literally Iowa's problem. Iowa would be talked about with, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. They would be at the top almost every year if they had offensive production. It almost feels like they have talent. They don't put the ball in their hands. They just they're running a 1995 offense where you hand the ball off 3 times and I'm going to play field position. And while that's great and your defense is unbelievable, your defense is going to at some point get beat on something. And it feels like for the last 3-4 years for Iowa, if you score 10 points, you win the game.
Right.
Absolutely.
I need to correct that stat. It's 14 yards per pass is what I had there. They were 130th in the nation for total offense last year. There's only 131 teams.
Yeah. That is their issue. And like to Corey's point though, like when Iowa runs up against like teams like Ohio State, Michigan, who are capable, that we've seen, are capable of putting up 42 points against anybody. I mean, it really doesn't matter who, you play. You're capable of scoring those points against anybody,
They
you know?
scored 19 offensive touchdowns. And yeah, I mean, it's just ugly.
I'm pretty sure Michigan
Mhm.
had more in the first like 5 weeks of the season last year, and I'm sure Ohio State did too.
Yeah. Like in the first like three
So
weeks of the season, we had more
yeah, I mean
touchdowns. Like,
it's well, and it's what's baffling to me is when I look back at last season for Iowa, like their schedule was not unbelievably hard. It was more difficult than probably some, but I mean, like there were teams there that they should have probably scored 30 or 40 points and they scored 10.
10,
They scored 7.
and that
I
was
mean,
their
like
defense getting a pick six.
take nothing away from their punter because I think he was like the best punter in the country, but I mean, you would become the best punter in the country when you punt over 150 times a year, you know. I mean,
Right.
like you have no choice but to become the best punter.
You absolutely
And
don't.
I mean, you've had Brian Ferentz there for what, 7, 8 years now, and he's the quarterback's coach, and he couldn't develop Spencer Petras
To
in those
anything.
40 years he was there. Like, I feel they should have either moved on more than a year ago or looked earlier for someone to bring in or just try to back up. I mean, if that was the best option you had and
So
Cade McNamara is as good as he is, it could be a decent revelation this year if they let him go.
could. So that leads me
Well,
to
Could.
my next question though. Go ahead though, and I'll get
I
into
was
mine.
I was just gonna say, Nick and you and I talked about it all the time. Cade McNamara was really good at Michigan, and he is a really good game manager. But you also have to look at all the talent that he had around him at Michigan. He's not going to have all of that talent at Iowa. So
It's
it's going to
true.
be is he really that good? I mean, it was one of those things where it's
It's
like
true.
I felt like it was a big loss for Michigan just because he was kind of like a piece that kept the team together over COVID, and the reason we were actually decent was a lot of it had to do with him bringing Michigan back to glory. But it's
It
also
was
like
also a
he
safety
has
net though. It was also a safety net in case anything happened to JJ, you knew you had a good guy to fall back on.
well, I mean, but it's
It's
also I mean, but
Yeah.
also it's there. He's one of those players. When I look back and I watch highlights of him, you say, "Oh, okay, he is." Right on the money sometimes, but then when he throws the deep ball, he throws it 3, 4 yards short.
yeah.
He's kind of
Oh,
dangerous when he throws it across the middle. It's he's very immobile, and in an offense that struggled last year, the offensive line at Iowa is decent. Obviously, it's going to be better probably than some other teams in the Big Ten. But I mean, it's one of those things where it's like he's not mobile, so you have to route run for 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and he's going to have to get the ball out because he's going to be under pressure.
Absolutely.
that's fair.
Um so Ethan, going off of what you were saying though with Brian being there,
Hmm.
do you guys think that the only way that you are probably going to get rid of him is if you move off of Ferentz in general? Like
Yes.
you just fire his dad?
But also, I think at the
Because
same point, his dad has done so much good there, and they've been consistent, and they've proven they can win games. I feel like it's hard to move off Kirk too until he says, "All right, I'm going home."
but well, right, and I think that's the conundrum that they're in because I don't see him firing his son. You know what I
I
mean?
mean, he'd have to do. They would have to fall flat on their face with the offense they just picked up this year.
I mean, if
And
they have a repeat performance of last year, you imagine halfway through the season you got to let him go,
he's Kirk is
right?
186 and 115 there overall, and he's given them 10 bowl games wins in 25 years.
Well, right.
Uh, I mean, you just brought your kid in for the last third of your career here at this company, and you're still getting wins in bowl games. So
I don't think he'll fire his son. He definitely won't
I don't
fire
think
his
he
son,
can.
Right.
but I think what he could do is he could bring in another offensive mind and make him like co-offensive coordinator and give the play calling duties to somebody else. I mean, at the same time, you know, Nick, we talk about it all the time. You can hire whoever you want, but at the end of the day, as the head coach, you make the final decision on
Right.
what's happening. So, to me, they will
You're
never let
absolutely
go of
right in
Kirk.
that
It's going to
aspect.
be Kirk's going to retire as a Hawkeye. He's done. He took a program that nobody cared about and made them care. Um, you know, I think he'll be there. Again, I don't think he'll fire his son. I think there's just it's you have to do things differently. Your son, you have a connection with, and obviously don't want to let him go. But you can't have the program suffer because he doesn't know what he's doing.
Facts. That's a good point.
Drew, your thoughts? You've been sitting over there. It looks
Um,
like you've been pondering.
yeah. So, when they hired Brian Ferentz, it's this real weird deal where Brian Ferentz, his direct superior is not his father because he is his father. His direct superior is actually the AD, Gary Barta, um,
Okay.
to try and, I don't know, get rid of the nepotism or whatever. Um, but Gary Bart has been the AD at Iowa for so long. Him and Ferentz are best friends. Gary Barta is retiring. His last day is August 1st of this year. I believe by next year or the year after, we'll have a brand new regime in Iowa. I also lightweight believe that Iowa has a culture problem. Um, in 2020, the strength and conditioning coach was fired due to racism. Brian Ferentz was in that lawsuit. He was
W
named in that lawsuit.
wasn't that the strength and conditioning coach Urban was trying to bring to Jacksonville?
Yeah, Chris Doyle is his
Yes,
name.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. That's exactly who it was. Okay. I was just the
Yep.
clock
Good
got,
call.
yeah, the gear started turning, and I was like, huh, that's that guy. Okay. Keep
I
going though.
forgot
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
So that, along with, I was looking at Kirk's Wikipedia earlier, and he has a whole section on Wikipedia of controversies, and scandals, and there's 5 different topics in there. So I'm wondering if Iowa is about to get hit here soon with a Northwestern type scandal,
Scandal.
not the
Okay.
sexual nature, but more racism, prejudice, all the
Culture.
traditional
Culture.
American shit.
Okay.
Um, but I think the key point here is that Gary Barta has retired. So Kirk Ferentz is going to have to make real good butt buddies with this next AD, um, to hang around. Um, yeah.
So you think,
I didn't know that.
yeah, so you're actually thinking probably at the end of this year.
I don't think at the end of this year, because I do. My outlook for Iowa this year is Big Ten championship. So you can't really fire a coach after he takes to a Big Ten championship or wins 8, 9 games. I I'm saying years from now,
2024.
there's going to be some sort of shit that comes out, that kind of speeds the process along.
And you're thinking maybe 2024 is that year.
I don't know,
No?
possibly,
Possibly. Okay.
but
It would make sense
I
though
don't.
that
It
from what
it
you're
depends on
saying,
who they bring in. It
yeah,
depends on who they bring in as the new AD is
the
good. If
absolutely.
the new
Exactly.
AD if the new AD wants to run a thing all the way through the system, he'll find what he needs to find. It's just a matter
Absolutely.
of how deep he wants to go.
Right.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Um because the way I the way I'm looking at it though, now that you mentioned that, Drew, is could this be like the new AD just comes in and sees some of the stuff and just goes, like you say, we need a regime change. We need a complete overhaul of the program. We need to institute a new culture. Um,
It, I feel like
And I could
when you're a new boss or something, you want to like
put your
create your
stamp.
own. Yeah, you want to put your
Yeah.
stamp on it. You want to create your own thing. You know.
Yeah, put your
You
stamp
got to
on it.
make you got to make your own legacy, but not as, I don't say intense right away, but you definitely have to take it and make it your own. Because if you just leave and band-aid up what's been put there before you, you're not
Yeah.
going to make any difference.
And
Yeah,
then if something comes out that makes you look bad,
Yeah.
exactly.
even if you weren't involved.
Correct.
Yeah, you did nothing to progress from the previous situation, your state that your program was in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um,
Um, so yeah.
that's wild. I didn't even know that their
That's just
AD
kind of
was.
speculation by me.
I like it
I
though.
mean,
That's
I
a.
believe it. Yeah.
But
I
the AD change is a big thing, I think.
see. I don't even view that as
And with the LA teams coming in.
absolutely, but I don't even think that's speculation. Like to me, that's common sense. You know what I mean? Like you've had this AD Kirk Ferentz. They're together for God knows how long. You know what I mean?
Ferentz has been there. This is his 25th
25th,
year.
25. So
Yeah.
they've been together for at least probably 10 to 15 years, if not more, probably 25. And then you got this new guy coming in who's like, we have an issue here. And I think the best way to do it may be to just do an overhaul. It makes sense. It's just common sense tells you that that's definitely a possibility here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, dang man, that's
I mean,
awesome.
I still don't think he's going to leave. I think it's going to be a retiring situation, which I
Well,
mean, I could see him
Right.
retiring soon
well,
anyway. And I know that could push him, obviously maybe into early retirement more than he wants to. But I mean,
I don't
it,
think
it as it's as Drew said, if Iowa is a 10-win team this year and in the Big Ten championship game, you,
I
I
don't
mean
think you're
that
gonna
buys another 4 or 5 years.
Oh yeah. And if you
right.
look at their schedule this year,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's good.
Obviously, we haven't gotten there yet, but did you see how favorable the schedule
Yes,
is this year?
It's
absolutely. We're gonna
unbelievable.
get to
It's
it, but
unbelievable.
but I don't think it's gonna be necessarily the AD coming out in a press conference and saying Kirk Ferentz is fired due to all these allegations. So is so and
No.
so,
Yeah.
so and so. I think it's more or less going to be a hey, like a behind the doors conversation where he's just like, hey, this all is coming out. You've done great things for our program over your history here. We want to, out of respect and everything, we just retire. Do like the Jim Tressel thing, basically. Have a
Well,
press
yeah.
conference. I'm walking away. That's just what
Depending
it
on
Well,
what
he
is.
didn't.
happens, I mean, also
Yeah.
depending on what comes out, he's got
Right.
the tenure there to get the Joe Pod treatment. I mean, they could wipe him clean depending on what
Exactly.
actually comes out of this. He's 25
Yeah.
years, almost 200 wins. He shoots a perfect record this year. He's leaving at exactly 200 wins.
You could have another Joe
Perfect
Paz
record.
situation.
That's a
I didn't
little
say it's
much.
Um,
not going to happen, but
I just want to say I'm not like manifesting this or trying to get Ferentz
oh
in
no.
trouble or anything. Just from the surface, this seems
logical.
it seems like what's going on here.
Right.
Also, he's from a very older generation, and today's generation, there's a lot of change.
Absolutely. Before we get to Iowa's schedule, Ethan, we did not get your Indiana and Purdue um records. If you want to just go ahead and give us those here real quick.
Let's see if I've got those notes here. Otherwise, I'll just pop into their schedule. Indiana, Purdue.
Bad.
Yeah.
Pull up my my notes here. Gotta
Bad.
go back. What note set was that? What show was that?
The one you
Two,
were
two,
yep,
two, two
you
ago.
were
Two ago.
the lake. You were at the lake, 4th of July.
Hellwava. Purdue. Let's see here.
Their schedule, man,
Yeah.
brutal.
That's rough.
Just to let you know, Drew went 4-8. Corey and I went 6-6.
I've got 2, 3, 4 wins, a couple question marks. I'll go 5-7 and split the difference
All ready
for
for
Purdue.
Purdue. All right,
Yeah,
Indiana.
Indiana.
Hmm.
Drew went 3 and
Bad.
9. Corey went 5 and 7, and I went 7 and 5.
Whoa, dude.
Any quick hits on how
Seven
good
and five.
Louisville's?
I'll give you $100 if they go 7-5. That's how
You know
confident I
what?
am they won't
I
go
will
7-5.
also. I'll chime in $50 if they go 7-5.
Cool.
Wow.
Uh, how? Okay, can I get a quick hit on Louisville real quick? Are they decent?
Louisville's very good.
Oh,
Also,
all right.
Jeff Brom.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate. I'm putting Indiana at 2-10.
Alrighty. All right, let's get to Iowa here.
Where are you?
Rough season. Rough season in Bloomington.
Iowa kicks off the season against Utah. Then they get rivalry weekend against Iowa State, at Iowa State, and then they get Western Michigan, go to Penn State, 2 home games with Michigan State and Purdue, go to Wisconsin, and then they get a road of home games starting with Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers, Illinois, and then they end the season with Nebraska.
It's fair to note the game against Northwestern is being played at Wrigley Field, but they are
Yes,
treated as the home team, I believe, which is
Northwestern
ironic.
is.
Oh,
Sweet.
they are? Okay.
No, Iowa.
Oh, I would
Iowa
assume
Is Iowa
is.
the home?
I think Iowa's the home team.
Iowa is the home team.
That's what it reads. It could be
Yes.
wrong,
It
but
could be wrong, but that's what ESPN is reading here. Let's go Ethan, Drew, Corey. What's your records here for Iowa?
well, I look at this schedule and I see 4 true road games. You're going to play for the Cyhawk at ISU. You got Whiskey, Penn State, and Nebraska on your schedule. You don't pull Ohio State or Michigan. I've got 5 locks at a win, a loss, and 7 question marks. My ceiling's 11-1. My floor is 7-5, but I'm locking in tight at 9-3. I'm going to split the middle.
Alrighty, Drew.
Well, first off, I gotta give a shout out to this defense because I love Iowa's defense. Phil Parker is the best defensive coordinator in the conference, maybe in the nation.
Country, safe saying that.
Country. Okay,
Country's
that's fair.
Country's a good play.
Love Phil Parker. Also, the special teams coordinator, LeVar Woods, will be a name to know here soon. He's probably the best special teams coordinator in the conference, maybe the country. Cooper DeJean is going to be a first round pick. Dante
Love
Craig
Cooper
could be a
DeJean.
first round pick. I really like this defense. When it comes to the schedule, they open up with Utah State. That's an easy win. Iowa State's going to be pretty interesting. The Clones are coming off a rough year, but Matt Campbell's a phenomenal coach, and they return pretty much all of their offense outside of Xavier Hutchinson. So I have Iowa winning that game barely. Western Michigan is going to be the worst team in FBS. At Penn State, loss. Michigan State win. Purdue win. At Wisconsin, toss up. Minnesota, toss up. Northwestern win. Rutgers win. Illinois, toss
Win.
up. At Nebraska, toss up win. I have Iowa at 9-3.
Corey?
Up and down the schedule, I look at it and I just think I don't see too many losses. That's really the kind of thing that's shocking. It all depends on their offense. If their offense comes to play, they could win every game. They could literally win every game. I think Penn State at night is a loss. It's the night game. It's going to be the whiteout game. There's just it's no matter who that game was, you would take Penn State, whoever it is. I mean, I think 10-2. I think Iowa State is just a little tricky. It's on the road. It's a rivalry game. If the offense, I just don't know that the offense will come to play that early. I think as the year goes on, the offense is going to continuously get better. I think 10-2.
Alrighty. I'm gonna go 8-4 for Iowa. I like that 8-4 for them. Let's move on over to Minnesota. Oh yeah, Minnesota, eh? Um,
Oh, don't you know? Don't
oh
you
yeah,
know?
don't you know Minnesota? Um, Drew, you like Minnesota, don't you?
I'm a big fan.
Big fan, huh? Big fan of PJ
Row the
Fleck. You
boat.
Love the Gophers. I've always loved the Gophers.
PJ Fleck.
Fleck. We are rowing the boat. Are are you rowing the boat this year with Minnesota? Because there's rumors that they could be contenders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've heard PJ say that this is his most complete, well-rounded team. So he's feeling pretty good about that. They're coming off 2 9-win seasons, which is pretty
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 great
awesome for
for
Minnesota
Minnesota.
football.
The Golden Gophers. Who
Yeah.
would have thought? Who would like? Let's just pause here real quick, guys. Real quick. Like, let's rewind the clock back to when we were all in high school, from like 2005 to like 2010, right? Would you guys have ever thought Minnesota would have back-to-back 9-win seasons? Like in the
I
future?
mean,
Because to me, I would have been like,
Yeah.
nah,
yeah.
nah,
I mean,
not
I
happening.
believe everything goes in cycles. I believe, and that's very cliche, I'm sure. But if you look at everything, it circles around. You look at how dominant USC and the West Coast was, Nebraska, the Midwest, Texas, they were up there all the time, Oklahoma, and then the Big Ten, and now you're just in this dominant lock of the Southeast. I think it just all swirls around. I mean, you could say it across all professional sports. It's just who gets to the new thing first. Whoever, look what Golden State did. They revolutionized offense. You got
Okay.
to pick the new thing.
I think coaching. I mean, we all knew Fleck was a good coach. We knew he was going to
Right.
implement his thing. Obviously, the first
Yeah,
couple years
I don't
didn't
know.
really go as the first couple years didn't go as planned. But I mean, he's a solid football coach. He runs his offense. He runs his system. The one thing I'll say about Minnesota that you can't say about a lot of other teams is they beat the teams they should.
Right.
I mean, every year they play the teams they're favored. They should win. They win. It's they don't. They come up a little short when they play the bigger name teams and are on the road a little bit. But I mean, year in and year out, PJ Fleck wins the games that he's supposed to. I mean, he did that even when he was at a smaller school.
Yeah. I mean, he's been over 500 in 4 of the 6 years he's been there. He's won more than he's lost. And he's got 4 bowl wins in those 6 years. So future's looking bright.
Yeah, I think PJ Fleck is the ultimate motivator. He is the ultimate. I call him the 3-star king because he takes 3 stars and develops them into NFL players. So, that's the way Minnesota wins. You're not going to be successful every single season doing that, but I mean, and Fleck's third year, they went 11-2. Now they're coming off back-to-back 9-win seasons. Obviously, coaching is a big deal up there. And they have, on the defensive side, they have my second favorite defensive coordinator in the Big Ten, and Joe Rossi.
Okay.
I uh, I really like this Minnesota team. Unfortunately, the schedule is very tough.
Yeah, they got a tough
And
schedule.
according to Phil Steele, it's the 7th hardest schedule in the country.
Wow.
Oof.
Yeah.
Drew, like you were saying, he is the 3-star king. His entire recruiting class, for this 2023 year, for all these incoming freshmen, he had 1 4-star. And it was a wide receiver here out of Georgia. Kenrick Lanier, enrolled there, and He was their only 4-star. Oh, sorry, they had a couple 4-stars. Sorry, they had two. Greg Johnson, as well, an inside linebacker was a 4-star. But everybody else, bunch of 3-stars, man. Um, and it's honestly amazing what PJ's been doing up there. Um, when you talk about motivating Drew, the first clip that comes into my mind was it was after a big win, maybe one of like their 11-2 bowl win season that they had, and he was in the locker room and he was like, "What did I tell you guys? You apply enough pressure to that coal, to that carbon. You apply enough pressure, and what do you have?" And he pulled out a big, just a big rock of a diamond, and he goes, "You get a diamond," and everybody in the locker room just went crazy, right? I mean, you even saw like position coaches, players who probably didn't even see the field throughout the year. Everybody was just like going crazy in their locker room. And I think that just clip in my mind speaks to exactly what you were talking about with how well he can just motivate these young men into becoming great football players, but also great individuals, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think I mean, I don't know him personally, but like from interviews, you can just kind of gather that like he's a normal guy. He's like really motivated to help these kids, like not just succeed in football, but life.
Exactly.
Like he feels like the perfect coach almost.
Absolutely.
Yep.
What do you guys think about they lose Ibrahim, right?
Yeah.
Their star running back.
All-time
Yep.
leading rusher.
Lost their all-time leading rusher and their number 2 passer in Tanner Morgan.
Yeah, they lose so much production, um, on their offense. Who is going to step up on this team that is like are there do they have two guys who can step up and give them that production, or are they going to have to find it from the entire running back room, or like the receiver room is going to have to entire receiving corps needs to step up? Um, is that what we're going to see more or less out of Minnesota, or do they do have the one or two guys that can step up into those roles and give you that production?
Well, I think it starts with the quarterback, and the new quarterback is Ethan Kaliakmanis. A lot of hype for him. They refer to him as the Greek rifle up in Minnesota.
My
Apparently, the
boy,
kid has a cannon for an arm.
my
He's also
boy.
pretty mobile. So people are already projecting him to be better than Tanner Morgan, which says quite a bit. Here's a fun fact: Minnesota has not had a quarterback drafted since 1972. So they are in
Sheesh.
no way a quarterback factory.
No.
Um, the running back room, despite losing Mo Ibrahim and Trey Potts, who transferred to Penn State, they bring in Sean Avery, who is an all MAC running back for 2 years, two 1,000-yard seasons. The dude is a tank. He's small, but he is a tank. They also have two freshman running backs, Zach Evans and Darius Taylor. They are dudes to watch. The receiving core has Brevin Spanford, who's one of the best tight ends in the country, maybe the best tight end in the conference. I don't know. Chris Autumn Bell is a returning wide receiver who I feel like has been there for 5 years, but he's injury prone, so I never really know what you're going to get with him. And then they bring in a big transfer from Charlotte, Elijah Spencer. He was an honorable mention All Conference USA last year. Uh, oh yeah, then Corey Crooms comes in also from Western Michigan, a 4-year starter at Western at wide receiver. The offensive line, they lose John Michael Schmitz, the center. That was a big loss. They also lose a starting right guard. Um, but it looks like the offensive line might be pretty good. Um, I think the offense could be very good if they can click, if Kaliak Manis and these young running backs can step up.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I look at it, it's very hard to reproduce what Mo Ibrahim gave you
Mm-hmm.
and what Tanner Morgan gave you. Guys, we know what it's like just watching like bigger schools win. Like, I mean, it's hard to replace Ezekiel Elliott's. It's hard to replace Blake Corum's, Donovan Edwards. You know, it's hard to replace Saquon Barkley's. You know, it's hard to replace your Justin Fields, your JJ McCarthy's, your Trace, Trace McSorley's. Those guys are hard to replace because of what they've given you, for the time that they were there. And to me, when I look at Minnesota, one thing I think PJ Fleck does more than anybody, especially at the caliber of a program he's at, he plays very and puts good emphasis on team football, right? Not necessarily, hey, our entire game plan is going to give Mo Ibrahim the ball here, right, for this game. Now, if it works out that way because the defense is giving, Mo Ibrahim 15 yards a carry, why wouldn't you do that, right? But I just think PJ Fleck is very good at playing team balanced football. And I think which in turn puts his teams into good positions to win. So I think for me at least, when I'm looking at this Minnesota team, I think when you're looking at replacing that production, it's going to come from your position groups and all the Greek gunslinger is going to have to do is manage the games. I don't think he's going to have to make JT Barrett throws like, against Penn State to win games. I don't think he's going to have to make a Trace McSorley play or a JJ McCarthy play to win games necessarily. I think as long as he manages the games, Minnesota's going to find themselves into positions to win, to be winning those games.
Yeah, I mean, it's a collective effort. That's always how
Yes.
PJ Fleck is. It's not just going to be one guy. Obviously, you can't replace the type of talent that they had previously. It's just not going to happen in 1 year. But they've got some guys that in some of the smaller games, the games they should win should show up just fine. Their schedule is brutal though. So for a new quarterback in a new everything, it's brutal.
Let's get to it. Let's get to their schedule. It's not looking. Their schedule has an uphill battle like of Mount Everest for the Golden Gophers and PJ Fleck to climb this year. They start the season home against Nebraska with Nebraska under a new regime. Then they get it their considerably probably their only break of the year against Eastern Michigan. And then they go to North Carolina with Drake May and at Northwestern, which probably is going to be another break for them. And then they get Louisiana, and then they host Michigan, go to Iowa, host Michigan State, host the Fighting Illini, go to Purdue, go to Ohio State, and then they have to host Wisconsin during rivalry weekend. That's a hard schedule, guys.
It's not friendly by any standard.
They have literally 2 games that I would consider are guaranteed wins, and that is Eastern Michigan and Northwestern at this point.
Yeah.
I mean,
you could throw Louisiana in there too.
I guess I could throw Louisiana, yeah.
This is interesting. Louisiana's homecoming. That's one way I would tip heavy towards Minnesota that game. Golly, though, this is it's the first time Northwestern. I was looking at the schedule. North Carolina has ever played Minnesota.
Is it really?
Going to Chapel Hill. Yeah.
Oof.
Golden Gophers. pretty much 500 against the spread on ACC teams against 1985. So most of the time they're playing them in a bowl game. This is a regular season. This is a big. I'm going to say
It's a big
everybody's
game.
healthy at that point in the year. Yeah, I mean this is huge. Both teams should be at 100%. I don't care, what you guys really think. North Carolina has to play South Carolina week 1 and Appalachian State week 2. They could be 0-2 going into this game. And I understand that's a large leap to say, but North Carolina could be pretty hot and upset going into this game.
You're not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be a big question mark game. It is a big question mark game on my list here.
Mine too.
Your 5 road games. You're going to Ohio State. You're going to Chapel Hill. You go to Northwestern, Iowa, and Purdue. I don't know. I think the home draw is a lot more favorable, and it's going to look better to get wins. Your hardest home game is Michigan, which is guaranteed pretty much an L, but it's a home game, so it shouldn't be a blowout, I hope.
And I
Might
don't
be a
know.
night game.
Minnesota
It might be a
plays,
night game.
and yeah,
That'd be
Minnesota
fun. That'd be a
plays.
lot of fun.
And don't forget, I mean, Minnesota took Ohio State a couple years ago in their home opener. They played them really tough, you know.
But now you're getting you're
No,
coming off 2 games
yeah,
against
you're
one Northwestern and then Louisiana, and Michigan's
I'm
coming
just
off.
saying, that Minnesota plays the teams like the big games. If they have a big home
Right.
game like in conference, they typically play those teams well. Is what
And
I'm saying.
looking at Michigan's schedule walking into this game, they still won't have had to play 100% of
No.
a game. So you're still going to get a fully healthy Michigan, hopefully. I've got 4 lock wins, 2 losses, and 6 question marks. I got a ceiling of 10-2 and a floor of 5-7. But I'm going to lock in at about 8-4. I think that's a healthy
8-4.
guess for this year. Yeah.
Drew.
They can do a lot in these 500 games, and I think that's going to come down to what makes their schedule.
Absolutely. Drew?
Yeah, so I'm not really worried about the first 2 games. Nebraska week 1's not going to have it figured out. EMU's a win. At North Carolina, I'm thinking is a loss because it's on the road. I also worry about the defensive line putting pressure on Drake May. Northwestern's a win. Louisiana's a win. The Michigan game will be interesting because that is a rivalry game. So I imagine they'll be up and they'll be hyped for it. Michigan's coming off a week at Nebraska. Who knows what Nebraska will be. At Iowa, it's kind of a toss-up. Michigan State's a win. Illinois, toss-up. At Purdue, toss-up. At Ohio State, loss. And then Wisconsin, toss-up. I have Minnesota going 7-5.
7-5 already. Corey.
I'm looking up and down the schedule trying to find more wins. I have 5 guaranteed wins for them. I still think Nebraska the first week of the season is a toss-up. Just you're starting a new quarterback. You've got new position players. It could go either way for both teams. Eastern Michigan, Drew said a bunch of times, is going to be poop. So, that's probably an easy win. North Carolina, they have less question marks than Minnesota, so you favor the Tar Heels. It's one of those games where you'd like to think, okay, PJ Fleck's going to have his team ready to play, and they might be able to beat North Carolina. I just don't see that happening. Drake May is going to probably be a top 10 pick in the draft, and he's going to show why. Northwestern is one of those games you'd like to think is a win. They're going to be going through a whole new stuff, but it is in Northwestern, potentially maybe a night game, just one of those weird. There's 5 guaranteed losses on Minnesota's schedule. I mean, I don't think they'll beat Michigan. I don't think they'll beat Iowa. I think they're going to lose to either Illinois or Purdue one of those weeks. And they're not going to beat Ohio State and Wisconsin. It's at home. It's one of those toss-up games again. So I'm going to go 7-5 as well.
I got
Sorry.
Minnesota going 8-4 here this year. So we got 8-4, 2 8-4s, 2 7-5s. I like it. Guys, that's all I had here for us today. It's 11 a.m. on this beautiful Sunday. Guys, go enjoy the rest of your days. Thanks for being here with us, everybody. And we'll catch you next week here when we give you. What do you guys want to do next week here? Would you guys would you rather
Who we got
do
so far?
would you rather do Nebraska, Michigan State, or Penn State, Wisconsin?
Oh, let's.
Michigan State, little brother. Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean,
are you just trying to go up one side and down the other?
No, I'm just looking at who we have left. So we have
Who
Nebraska,
do we have
Michigan,
left?
Nebraska, Michigan State, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, and Wisconsin. But Ohio State and Michigan are going to be there together.
Shocker. Let's.
So Nebraska, Michigan State, or Penn State, Wisconsin? Or Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Michigan State, Penn State.
Nebraska, Penn State.
Do Nebraska. All right, we'll do Nebraska and Penn State next week. So guys, everybody tune in here for that. We'll do Nebraska and Penn State next week, and we'll see you guys then. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for hanging out today, guys. Appreciate y'all. Nothing but love. Peace.